Hello, I'm Ross Tayler, your host and guide for Sacred Sundays, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to what's sacred within and around you. I'm also a life coach for empaths and sensitive souls, walking alongside those who are ready to come home to who they actually are. These conversations are part of fulfilling that purpose, a collective exploration of what it means to live in connection with the sacred. Some weeks you'll hear a sound-based offering to open the space. Other times we'll simply begin in conversation. However it unfolds, this is an invitation into presence, connection, and the beauty of the unseen. If these conversations find you, please subscribe, rate, and share so others can find their way here. Pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin. Today on Sacred Sundays, our guest is Liz Long. Liz is an award-winning author, artist, and professional believer that healing doesn't have to be boring. 3 years ago, Liz published Navigating Shitstorms, an honest, funny, no BS guide to finding your way through life's toughest seasons. Since then, it picked up 3 international book awards and helped readers everywhere discover that freedom isn't found by fixing yourself. It's found by finally loving yourself. Her newest book, Finding Freedomville, is the playful, hands-on guidebook that brings those ideas to life. When she's not writing, you'll find her creating bold abstract art and one-of-a-kind wearable pieces that remind people to literally wear what they believe. Whether she's speaking, painting, or making people laugh until they snort, Liz's mission is simple: help people stop surviving, start loving themselves, and create a life that feels like Freedomville. Welcome, Liz, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. We sort of passed each other last week in Gibson's at an event that I was at with a friend, and I saw your book on a coffee table, and through that mutual friend had a conversation, and it hit me, wow, Liz would be a great guest on the podcast. Nice to meet you and excited to have this conversation with you.
Thanks, Ross. I'm super happy to be here, and I love when synchronicities and common connections bring people together. It's a beautiful thing.
And I think being open to seeing those things and noticing them and answering the call when they happen as well is important.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And I think very much a byproduct of the book that you wrote. It's like the end result is we become more present, we become more aligned with ourselves, and we listen to that inner voice instead of ignoring it.
Yes, we do. And we also can begin to see that in other people. And then we attract those people into our world.
Exactly. We talked briefly before we pressed record, and we thought we'd have a little bit of fun. And we're going to do a little practice, which is referred to as bibliomancy, which is just opening up to a specific page and reading what comes up. And you're going to go to that page in the book and read something.
Yes. And I just want to say too, for the listeners, that I'd never heard of that word before. And I love the way it rolls off the tongue. It's actually a really fun word to say. Bibliomancy. Okay. Yes. You picked page 77, and that is in the second section of my book, which is about all the places in Victim Town. And I talk a lot about the voices in our head and the conversations that we have. And I've created this fictitious world I call Victim Town with 6 places. And they're all pretty common, and most people can relate to most, if not all of them. Page 77 puts us into the Guilt and Shame Cafe. So, page 77, here we go. There have been many detectives assigned to Linda's case over the years. I was never surprised to see them in my house. Aware of a different energy when I stepped in the door after school, I could feel their presence and would wonder what brought them around this time. My senses were confirmed by the adult huddle at the kitchen table, and when I was offered a fresh slice of Nana's pie for a snack before dinner. I'm confident they took their responsibilities seriously and cared deeply about the families of the victims. How could anyone do that job and not feel that way? None of them, however, could provide any of the answers we so desperately craved. I don't think it was from lack of trying or caring or working tirelessly. I believe each of them was doing the best they could with the resources they had available at the time. But it didn't make it any easier.
Perfect. And when you hear yourself reading that section, what does that bring up for you? Maybe there's something you want to add to it.
Well, yeah, it does definitely bring me back to my childhood, Ross. I have only 8 childhood memories. And I've done all kinds of modalities and spent a lot of time and money and hiring expertise to unlock more of my childhood. And I haven't, as of yet, been able to do that. You know, when we have a lot of shit that happened when we were young, we lock it up in places. And what I learned through therapy is that it's not always necessary to be able to access and unlock all of that in order to heal it and move on and have a fulfilled and happy, productive life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're reminding me. I was recently speaking to a friend who went to see Lee Harris in Vancouver.
Yep.
And apparently one of the things that Lee said during this recent talk was that none of what we experience, it's kind of a radical thought, but none of what we experience is actually ours. And so we could just set it down because underneath it all, we are these perfect, beautiful, spiritual beings here to have a human experience. And we could just let it go.
And that's the key, is in the letting it go and the surrendering, that it is only powerful and holds us back if we let it, if we believe the stories that we make up in our head about whatever happened to us, about what that means.
Mm-hmm. And the stories that we make up in our head create our state. I follow a teacher by the name of Deb Dana, and she wrote about polyvagal theory, which is all about the nervous system. And one of the things she says is story creates state. So it's how we feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Our brains need to fill in the gaps. So when stuff happens to us, particularly when we're young and we're not taught how to manage that, and we haven't had a previous experience and nobody's there to help unpack it and explain it, we make up stuff. And sometimes as kids, we make up really crazy, ridiculous meanings about something. And then it becomes a belief and part of us. So yeah, we don't need to relive a lot of the stuff, because that can also just re-traumatize us. You know, when we think about hard or terrible, in some cases, things that have occurred, but we can change the way we think about it. We can change the meaning that we associate to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in terms of the modalities that have supported you on your journey, which ones have worked? Which ones haven't worked? Which ones do you really think are, the best to work with? Like, what has been your experience?
Well, I'm happy to share the things that worked for me, and I do write about some of those in my book, Navigating Shitstorms. What I really encourage for people to do, though, is to listen to how it feels when they think about doing one of the modalities, and to just try it out, because everybody's different and everybody's dealing with different issues. And so some of the things that worked for me are not going to work for other people, and things that I found challenging might be the great answer for other people. So I think it's keeping an open mind and continuing to try different things until you begin to feel better. I really struggled with therapy for years and years. I couldn't find a therapist that I really resonated with and that seemed to be helpful. That was a problem for me. I mean, I've done everything from psychedelics and hypnotherapy, somatic work. I've done a lot of cognitive therapy with psychotherapists. I did do a lot of that. I mean, I ended up checking myself into a place for 2 months, and they were really generous in everything they provided. Had music therapy, we had nature therapy, we had sound therapy, nutrition therapy, all of those things. And one of the beautiful things about the time that we're living in, and particularly where we are in the west coast of Canada, there is so much to choose from. and some beautiful practitioners that are doing cutting edge and new modalities to help people heal. So I encourage people, I mean, I share, tidbits of what certain things are like. You really have to feel your way through it.
And I think you pointed to something really important, which is regardless of the modality, being able to check in with ourselves. Does this feel aligned? Does this feel like what my body needs, what my essence needs? And I think that's where we actually lose ourselves the most, is we're putting all of our authority outside and giving it up to these outside sources that are trying to help us. I mean, I remember once I was convinced that I needed to have a coaching session, and I paid $500 for a 1-hour coaching session. And in hindsight, it was not right for me to do that. Like, I was pulling towards something that I was looking for the solution, and it felt like that was going to be it. And it wasn't it, because at the end of the day, yeah, in hindsight, there was some beautiful experiences that happened in that 1 hour that I perhaps wasn't ready for, perhaps couldn't even metabolize. And only in hindsight do I look back and see, oh, wow, that actually was really beautiful and powerful and intense. But it was pushing up against my reality, which wasn't willing to accept that level of change or the degree of it. And so integration is a huge piece, like, because of so many of us are going back from all of these experiences back to our everyday, back to the same people.
Yep. Yeah. We're only each of us ever ready to change when we're ready to change. And nobody can convince us of when or how to do that. We might think they can, but everybody's going to do their healing at their own pace in their own time. And I mean, I've done a lot of that too. I used to think I could buy my healing. I could pay for the quick fix. And that's it's a common marketing tactic for every quick fix for weight loss, for fitness, learning about anything. You just pay this one-time fee and buy this one thing or do this one thing and you'll be all set. I think that's a pretty common experience for all of us. And we want to believe it, because how easy would it be if we could just write a check or do one thing and be transformed?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't work that way.
And to put this back in the context of the book, this piece around Victim Town, we can stay there for a long time if that's comfortable, because it can be comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable. It can be that, like Deb Dana says, you're home away from home.
Yeah, well, it is. And more people are finding their way out of Victim Town. But when you read what the voice in our head says in each of those places, so some of the other places in Victim Town are the denial trails, the control factory, where I lived most of my life, the guilt and shame cafe, which we touched on, the sorrow swampland. And it's where we go to. We all go there when the pain is too much. And we all have our go-to places in Victim Town. One of the things that naming these places does, though, is gives us a new, almost instant awareness of where we are. And once we know where we are and what we're doing, then we can make some changes more quickly. But yeah, the denial trails, the majority of the world hangs out there, in the bars drinking or, workaholics, exerciseaholics, all the things that people do to deny and avoid feeling their feelings.
And I think it's like to link back to the first section, which is childhood and our childhood experiences. We come by these things honestly. It's not like we created these things to hurt ourselves. We actually created these ways of being in order to help ourselves in the situations we were in. And so maybe we can go back to that first section and speak to that as well, because that's what creates the journey to Victim Town.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're all born with open hearts and pure love. And what happens is, to all of us in varying degrees and circumstances, we learn fear and we make up meanings about whatever happened to us, what it meant. And I've coined what we adopt to be the 3 shitty beliefs. And the 3 shitty beliefs are, number 1, I am unlovable, which includes the I'm not whatever enough. Number 2, my needs are not important. Other people's needs are more important than me, keeping the peace, people pleasing. And the third shitty belief that we learn is that the world is unsafe.
Mm.
And yes, to your point, we do exactly that. We come up with these coping mechanisms, which are solutions. They're solutions because we're not taught how to navigate our feelings. And it's not out of, malicious parenting. Parents are doing, as everybody is, I do believe, everybody is doing the best they can with the resources they have available in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Right? But our parents were never taught emotional intelligence or communication. I mean, as a kid, it was like, stop crying. Don't be such a crybaby. Like we were taught to actually, in a lot of cases, not express our feelings,
Mm-hmm.
let alone how to navigate them. So we come up with those beliefs and then we figure out ways to placate ourselves, to soothe ourselves. And those are the coping mechanisms that we drag into our adult lives, which might have served us somewhat in the moment, in the short term when we were little kids, but those ways of managing as we become adults out in the world are sabotaging us.
Mm-hmm. I love the simplicity of those 3 shitty beliefs because they really do encompass the main themes that we go through and the places that we create these thoughts that are driving our ways of being. And I think that's one of the things that struck me about your books is that they're digestible, they're accessible, you can identify with them very quickly. And so it's not like I recently slogged through The Myth of Normal, Gabor Mate, which is like this Bible of all his work kind of compiled into one book. And the only way I could get through it was to listen to the audiobook and read along, right? Because it was just so dense. And the last thing we need is more density. We need simplicity. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you. Yeah, one of the common feedbacks or testimonials I get from people is that it's a very easy and relatable read.
Mm-hmm.
And partly that's because I'm not a psychologist and I'm not a clinician. I'm not a doctor. And so I'm not writing from that scientific or medical background. I'm a regular human like everybody who's trying to figure out her shit. And I did do a lot of research and read Gabor Mate and lots of others. There's some groundbreaking work in the last 10 years about mental health and spirituality and all of that. And I've taken a lot of that and given credit where credit's due in my book, but really drilled it down to some simple, concise takeaways. And my writing's pretty conversational and easy to understand.
Mm-hmm. And right from the title, I mean, there's a playful energy to it. There's an accessibility through that.
Yeah, the title gets some awesome reactions when I do markets or book signing events. One of my most favorite things to do is I catch the eye contact of people walking by. They see the title, they read the title, and when it registers in their eyes, I see it. There's a relatability because we've all had to navigate shitstorms. It actually was a stumbling block. I published with a company out of Texas, which I'm not going to get into because I've since ended my contract with them. They came up with these titles for the book and there was a team of them. And my first response was, have you read the book? That was not good. And then I gave them some more guidance and they came back with some more titles and subtitles. And I was like, no, this is not it. And I ended up pushing the publication date by 3 months to find the right title. And they just kind of gave up and said, all right, well, let us know when you come up with a title and we'll redo the timeline and move forward. So I was in conversation with a friend of mine. And then they wanted my publisher to put the I of Shitstorms as an exclamation mark. I was like, no. If somebody's not okay with the word shit, they're really not going to like my book. And I'd rather that they just don't buy it because it's not going to be good. But that's my style, is that I call it like I see it.
It's interesting. There was and I think it's still maybe happening. The F word was very popular in a lot of book titles. And there was one I remember with the asterisk being the U. And there was something about those books that just repelled me. But Navigating Shitstorms doesn't do that. It's like you said, it's relatable. We've all gone through that experience. It's softer. Like, I mean,
It is. There's not the same hard edge to shit as there is to the F-bomb. And I do use that word in conversation.
Sure.
The F-bomb, I drop it all the time.
Sure.
But for me, there's a boundary with putting it in print. So, for example, the second guidebook that I'm working on now is, and I'm very excited about it. It's a guidebook to help people learn to love themselves, and it's called Unconditional AF.
Okay.
So I'm not going to use the F-bomb in text. There's something about seeing it in text that's harsh, sort of beyond my boundary limits. Right?
Sure.
That's just me.
Yeah. You mentioned a little bit earlier about your parents doing the best they could. And that really hit me because I remember having a moment raising my own children. I got divorced. I had my kids every other week. And I just had this moment of like, wow, like I'm really doing the best I can. Like I'm literally doing everything I can. And then it hit me, oh, wow, my parents did the best they can. And that was such a pivotal moment. I mean, it didn't change anything. It didn't change what happened. It didn't minimize what happened. It just put it into perspective. And I'm not trying to minimize some of the extreme things that people go through that I didn't go through, but we're all just trying to do our best with what we were given.
Absolutely. And I mean, I would invite you to consider that it didn't change what happened or any of that, but I think that it does when you're able to view it with that new perspective. I think that it changes the energy around it, and it changes the relationship with that person. Yeah. I mean, my childhood was really, really challenging, and I look back and I put myself in my mom's shoes and what she had to deal with. And it's easy for me to, from that vantage point, have compassion and love and understanding for all of that. I also raised 2 boys on my own and from a very unhealed place. I mean, just the other day, I sent my oldest son, who's now 36, something. It was a post that was on social media that really kind of summed up how I felt. And it was something like, I hope you know that all the times I wasn't able to be what you needed as a parent and all of that it wasn't from lack of love. It really was from not having the resources, not being healed enough and aware enough myself to be able to do that. And I've had lots of conversations with my boys about things that occurred, single parenting 2 boys, where I look back and think, man, I really messed that up. I handled that so poorly. And there are things that I did that, really fucked my kids up. And I also understand on a more spiritual, bigger perspective now that also is part of the journey that they chose and the lessons that they signed up and the circumstances required for them to be able to deal with that and work through that, for themselves. Yes. On a soul level. So not to beat yourself up. And I'm very fortunate in that they're super forgiving and understanding. And as a family of the 3 of us and now with their partners, we all just try to be better humans every single day, right?
Yeah. And I think parenting circles back to the guilt and shame cafe, because I know that for myself, I always had this belief that I wasn't doing it right, or that I was, there was a lot of guilt and shame that came around, even to do with like the choices my kids would make that were hard to be with, but also recognizing that was what they needed to do. And I just know that comparing myself to others brought up a lot of guilt and shame.
Yeah. Comparison can be a dangerous activity. When we can use it as inspiration and motivation, it can be positive, but mostly it holds us back because it comes from a place of judgment. The control factor is another big one for parenting too, that we know better than they do. What they should be doing and how they should be doing it. And some of it's for our benefit. Some of it's for the optics of how we look in the neighborhood and to the rest of our family and the other parents at school. And we got to let our kids drive their own bus.
And it's complicated because we're basically, like, I think when you take all of it and just bring it down to its core element, we're either doing what our parents did because we're just like, okay, I don't know any better, so I'm just going to do what they did.
Yeah.
Or in my experience, I was like, I am not going to be that. But then the pendulum swings to the other side. And so we end up missing anything in the middle. And that's the journey. Like, we're trying to find ourselves through that journey and find range in our experience. And I think one of the things I say to people the most, or often at least, is, are you doing that to make yourself feel better? Because if you are, you're not taking into consideration the other person's perspective or needs. And that, I think, is huge. And when you speak of control, it's like, I'm trying to influence the situation so that it feels aligned for me. But that's not what it's about.
Right? I know. I was a high-level executive at the Control Factory, Ross.
Sure.
And it's not just people that we try to control. We also strive to control events and circumstances. I was at a friend's house for dinner the other night, and there was a lot going on, and I was loading up her dishwasher, and I came back and she had unloaded everything I'd done and reloaded, and literally all she did was turn the plates facing the opposite way.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Control.
I've been a form of that person. No doubt.
We all have. We all have.
Yeah.
For sure.
I remember walking along the river in Squamish, and it had drastically changed course where I love to walk. And so the space on the rocks where I used to love just walking along was gone. Like, the river was now consuming it. And there was a part of me that wanted to move the river but it really hit me. I was like, I can't move this river. Like, there's no way that I can do that. And to surrender to that reality was hard.
It is hard. It's vulnerable. It's vulnerable. I describe it as our ability to trust in all outcomes. To understand that whatever unfolds for us in the way of circumstances or people or events, whatever happens is designed for our specific journey. And it's all good.
Yeah. There's that moment when we're looking back and we realize how important all those things were to help us get to where we are. And yet when we're in it, we're swimming upstream, trying to avoid it and do everything we can to control it. And yet I've had so many of those moments where it's like, oh, I'm so grateful that all of that happened now. And now it makes sense.
Yes. And I write about that. I coin a new term for it when we can have the awareness in the moment, like you just described. I call it near sight as opposed to hindsight. When you're in it, to think, wow, this is not at all how I expected this to unfold. This is not what I envisioned. This is not how I wanted things to go. And when we're resisting and when we're fighting and trying to control, that's where the suffering all lives. Because 99% of the time, like you said, it might be 1 year, 2, or it might be 10 or 20 years, but eventually we're going to look back and we're going to see how all of that served us. And had that not unfolded the way it did, you wouldn't be where you are. So if we can pull that back to the now, and when those things happen, kind of take a breath and think, all right, well, this is near sight. This is what it is right now. And it's okay.
Sure. So we've played in childhood a little bit. We've explored Victim Town. And so then the next piece is leaving Victim Town. But is there anything else you want to say about the first two before leaving Victim Town?
No, I think readers will find a resonance in all the places in Victim Town. I've got my favorites. There's also the anger gas station, which not really my go-to, but it is for a lot of people. The resentment parking lot. I've spent time there for years and years. One of the other places there, though, is Epiphany Hospital. And we want to try to stay out of Victim Town, and we want to get out before we end up in Epiphany Hospital, because that can sometimes be a crisis. situation. The one place in Victim Town where there is solace, and I put it in Victim Town because I believe it's accessible to us regardless of where we are, and that is the meditation meadow.
Okay.
And meditation has been, I don't know why it didn't come up when you asked me the modalities. That's probably the number one practice that has helped my healing and helped kept me out of Victim Town.
Mm-hmm.
Would be meditation.
And over the years, I've been blessed with teachers who really simplify meditation down to what it really is. And I think it's one of those things that can be perceived as this big thing that we need to conquer. And yet there's a simplicity to it as well. And I'm guessing that you have a way of speaking to that might be helpful.
Yeah, I like the phrase, and I wish I could credit the right person because it's not my concept. And I think I give them credit in my book. The purpose of meditation is not to get good at meditation. The purpose of meditation is to get better at life. And we get in our heads about it and we make it this big, high stakes, measurable outcome kind of thing. If I can't sit in this position with my fingers like this and in absolute silence for 45 minutes, then I can't meditate. It's pretty simple. And again, meditation is very different, looks different for everybody. I can have a very meditative experience walking in the forest by myself. I like to enjoy bubble baths, and I make it a ritual with setting the scene and everything else. And that's a meditative experience for me. Sure. Soaking in water. Meditation doesn't have to be sitting in the lotus position, and it doesn't have to take an hour.
Right.
Either. I would invite people to just play with being quiet and going inward. You can be lying down, you can be sitting up, you can be looking at the sky and the clouds. It can be all kinds of different things. So not to put judgment around it and have the goal just to be quiet. And when thoughts pop up, to just say, oh, that's an interesting thought, and let it go. It's not as hard as people like to make it out to be.
Yeah, to tag on to what you said about whoever said the meditation is a way of living, I think that's what you said. I like the concept of we're actually bringing the spaces in meditation, as small as they are, into our everyday life. So it's like that pause can come into the moment when someone's getting angry at me and I take a breath instead of reacting.
Absolutely.
That's the biggest thing that I've learned from meditation. I remember having a moment where my landlords were evicting me based on moving someone in. And I was really upset about it because I felt the energy of it was not truth. It was a bit of a manipulation. But I took a deep breath and I was like, okay, this is the end of this relationship. It's been good up until now. Yep. I don't need to get angry or react or fight. And it was my meditation practice that brought me to that moment.
Yeah. So you didn't go into the resistance suffering mode.
Exactly.
You went into the surrender, accept, and trusting in all outcomes mode, and and moved on and found peace. So the place opposite Victim Town is one that I call Freedomville. Yeah, and your response to that shit happening had led you to Freedomville, not to one of the places in Victim Town, and it's a choice, literally. And I have a diagram in my book. I call it the shitty life circle. Because we can't ever stop shit from happening. All right. Shit is going to continue to happen. But every time shit happens, we have a choice. And you readily identified the number one tactic, which is the pause. Yeah. Take a second, take a breath, because the voice in our head that we choose to believe is going to lead us to either Victim Town, one of the places in Victim Town, or it's going to lead us to Freedomville. And then we're going to come around that circle again, and guess what? Shit's going to happen again. So every single time shit happens, we have a choice.
And so ultimately, it is a choice, and we're choosing to change our relationship to what is happening.
Yeah, and it takes practice. I mean, there have been lots of big things that I've thought I've learned the lesson, right? The universe has provided the circumstances, the opportunities, if you will, for me to practice and learn this lesson. And I And then I learn it, I unpack it. It's like, okay, next time something like this happens, I'm not going to go there. I know better, not better. I know differently now. And I've learned this lesson. And then the universe will say, really? Let's see. And of course you get the opportunity again. And sometimes it takes multiple practice runs. And each time we do a little bit better about our response and how long it takes us and how well we do it. And then it gets integrated. That's the integration process of the lesson. And then we'll have some, coast for a little bit. We won't be presented with any of that same shit anymore. We'll get some new lessons.
Sure. I had a psychic reader tell me once that I basically chose relationships as my learning place. And when I say relationships, I mean all relationships.
Yep.
But I was told that if I didn't choose that, this would have been an easy life that I just coasted through. And by choosing that, though, I really signed up for some intense learnings. And to what you were just speaking of, they have been incremental changes. Like I haven't solved the problem. I haven't, found the core solution. I'm just learning in every single relationship and noticing, like you said, I'm not doing the same thing I used to do, or the volume is a little bit lower. And because I think the relational field is where we have the most opportunity for growth in our lives, because it is reflecting something to us. So when we're pointing our finger of this person is that, we're basically seeing ourselves and the parts of ourselves we don't like. But to accept that is like the biggest cringe, but that's where the work is.
Yes, it is. Yes. And I would say that I would take it a step further. I think the only place we can really learn those lessons and do that work is in relationship.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
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 It really is that. It really is that like breathtaking moment, because it's not easy going through this life.
No. And it doesn't have to be hard, though.
Exactly.
To a big degree is a choice. Our perspective is a choice. There can be hard things, difficult things, painful things that we have to do. And at the same time, we can have the perspective that I'm learning through this and this is for my highest good, and a trusting that you will get through this and it will propel me to a place that I can't even imagine right now, or introduce me to people, or that the way that this is going to unfold is going to be for my highest and best good. Mm-hmm. That's how I get through the tough ones.
For sure. And are there elements of Freedomville? Like I'm imagining, like what is the picture that you can paint of what that's going to look like when you get to Freedomville? What is it you get to experience? What does it look like? What does it feel like? What are the benefits?
I describe Freedomville as a place full of peace, love, freedom, and joy. And I might add creativity to that today, if I were to redo that. It's not a place where we can live 100% of the time. I mean, maybe there's some monks up there that live majority of their time in that space. But if we're functioning in the material world here, in relationship with all kinds of people, coworkers and friends and family and romantic partners, in those relationships, shit's going to happen. And whenever shit happens, our tendency will be to go to a place in victim town. And it's not like we never go there, but with a different awareness and a conscious approach to it, you can go there and in a quick second go, hey, all right, this is not where I want to be. This is not the response that is going to serve me. And you can reframe that and stay in Freedomville. When you can be in Freedomville most of the time, there's almost no chaos or drama or strife. I mean, shit can still happen, but it just kind of slides off and you move on and you don't get upset about it and you don't ruminate about things and you don't worry about things. You live more in a state of joy and play and fun.
Yeah, I like the metaphor of flowing with the river instead of trying to swim upstream.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just try to, build a dam. That's the control factory,
Hmm.
trying to stop. I mean, we can't control other people,
No.
period.
Yeah.
And all endeavors and energy spent trying to do that is it's counterproductive to our own happiness.
Hmm. And I've often felt like there's this on the spiritual path, there's this, well, you mentioned it, like the idea of being the Buddha under the tree. And perhaps we have this idea that that's what we're striving for. And I really believe it's the opposite. I think we're here to be human. And as we're being human, bring awareness to our journey and shift our behaviors. But I don't know that we're ever going to be just like the Buddha under the tree, because we have different experiences that we're engaged in. But I think the Buddha under the tree is about a way of being more than it is about the way we are experiencing life. I think we overcomplicate it in some ways. It's just about simplicity.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't have to be complicated. That's a story and a perspective that we get in our heads about. It doesn't have to be hard. We have to be true to ourselves, and learning to love ourselves, I think, is the quintessential human journey. I think that is the purpose of life. When we learn to love ourselves, we uncover our gifts, and then we can share our gifts with the world.
Mm-hmm.
Learning to love ourselves is not an easy journey. A lot of people don't even know themselves because
Yeah.
they've tamped down things that they used to do because, they're afraid of being ridiculed or rejected, or because the shit happened when they were kids, because, they think it's frivolous. We've got all these reasons, rationales why we don't let the world know who we are. Right.
And I think that that's so important, because this concept of loving ourselves, I'll speak about my own journey, that was such an elusive piece. And I had to start with getting to know myself, because everything that I was focused on was outside of myself. The roles I played, the things I did in the world, instead of like really knowing what do I need. And so the journey to loving myself actually started by showing up in a space at the same time every morning and checking in with what I want. Do I want to meditate? Do I want to journal? That's where it started. And then it started to grow and grow. But the key was showing up for me.
And that's a confidence building experience when you can show up for yourself over and over again. Then you can begin to trust yourself again.
Exactly.
I mean, you touched on some things that talk about where we find our worth, our self-worth. And loving ourselves is tied to our self-worth, kind of in an insidious way. And we've been conditioned to believe that our self-worth is found in the accomplishments we have and the money we make and the material possessions we own and the way we look, and all those external things are what make us worthy and valuable. And it's such a hogwash. I mean, the truth, the real truth is that every single human is valuable and worthy for nothing other than just being here in this human body for this experience. That is all that's required to be worthy, right? There's so much judgment out there in the world that tells us otherwise.
Yeah. I really have this belief that if there is a life review at some point, I just imagine whatever that looks like. And I've said this I used to work at a treatment center, and I would work with addicts, and they do a lot of things that they regret when they're under the influence. But I just had this vision of like, at the end of it all, there's this beautiful gratitude for all that we did and all that we played out and all the good, the bad, because it was all part of it. And we were doing it perfectly. And there's nothing but love about all of it. And if we could just remember that, which is, I think, what we're trying to remember is how we arrived here, then it becomes so simple. But it's not that simple for our minds to get around that. But the heart knows.
Yes, our heart knows. And to add to that point, Roz, we have inside of each of us all of the resources and everything we need to love ourselves.
Yeah.
And to have the courage to step into that. It can be scary and it does require change. There's lots of relationships that will end when we learn to love ourselves. And that's one of the reasons that holds people back from growing and healing is the fear around losing significant relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can feel like you're cutting off everything that is stable. It feels like breaking the foundation of what's holding all these things that we value. We've seen it in lots of movies and what happens when we make that choice. I'm thinking of like Eat, Pray, Love, where she goes on this journey and realizes what's really important, but you're having to turn away sometimes from all the things that you thought were important, like the house and the car and the job, and you find out what's real afterwards. And you find out what's true. And maybe those things come back and you have a different relationship to it. But to really step away, like I think one of the elements of the hero's journey is like, crossing the threshold, which is like to literally turn away from everything that you thought was important. And there's no going back once you make that choice.
No, there's not. And that's okay. When you can trust in all outcomes and not know what might lay ahead, but know that staying where you are is not true to yourself. Yeah. To have a voice and to speak your truth and to have boundaries. When we don't love ourselves, we let people treat us less than we deserve. We allow it. We blame the other person. Oh, they're abusive, they're whatever. Well, we allow it until the time where we love ourselves enough to understand that we deserve better, that we deserve more. And then we can make changes.
And boundaries are a way of loving ourselves.
Oh my gosh. I'm still learning boundaries, Ross. I was totally new in the boundary department. I had almost no boundaries. I didn't know how to. No, I was a people pleaser and I couldn't express what I wanted. I was one of those people, where do you want to go for dinner? Oh, I don't know, wherever you want to go. Yeah. Boundaries is a big, big deal. And when you're playing with them and learning them, sometimes, at least me in the very beginning, I was really awkward with the boundaries. Like, no, I'm not doing that. Instead of, that's just not going to work for me. Yeah. Have a nice time. Boundaries are confronting because in order to get to a place of where you can exert a boundary, you need to face all the times you didn't set a boundary, which is really hard to look at. And the place that I learned boundaries, which was really hard, was being the facilitator at a treatment center. If I didn't hold a boundary to the clients, I was paying for it in ways you couldn't imagine, right? Because people who are struggling with addiction, they're very creative, very resourceful, and they will do anything they can to push a boundary. And so you have to hold them. And you almost don't get respected unless you hold them. And so it was a really interesting journey to learn that, it's okay to have this really solid, firm, clear boundary of no, that's not okay. And then that spills into your everyday life as well. So it's a journey. It always is a journey. Yeah. All right, Liz. So I think we've covered some good ground. I always like to close the podcast by asking the same question. And so I'm going to ask you that same question. What's one simple way that someone could connect with the sacred today? I have a little trick that I like to do on a regular basis and share with others. We walk by mirrors and are exposed to mirrors all the time, our rear view mirror. And I would invite the listeners to, the next time they walk by a mirror, to pause. You don't even have to stop, but pause for a nanosecond to meet your own eyes and smile at yourself. Just see yourself. Just for a flash. Every time you walk by a mirror, have a little look and have a little smile at yourself. Brilliant. Brilliant and accessible. I love it. Yeah. So Liz, it's been a gift to have this conversation with you and to get to know you and to get to know your books and the elements of your books. Is there anything you'd like to say about where folks can find you? If you just Google Navigating Shitstorms or Liz Long, you'll find my website. You can, if you like, sign up for a newsletter. I'm not very consistent. I think it's been 6 or 7 months since I've sent one out. When something noteworthy happens, I'll share. And then social media. I'm on Instagram and Facebook a little bit. Yeah.
Excellent. And I'll make sure to put those links in the show notes.
Okay, terrific.
Yeah. So thanks again for this conversation. And I wish you the best.
Thanks so much, Ross. It was super fun.
Thank you for joining us on Sacred Sundays. I hope something in today's offering spoke to your spirit, stirred something true, or simply gave you a moment to breathe. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe, rate, or share. It truly helps this work reach the people who are meant to find it. If you'd like to step inside my world a little further, I host a free live practice 3 mornings a week called Start With You. Just 20 minutes on Zoom to return to your own energy. Everything you need can be found at the link in the show notes. Until next time, may your day be slow and sacred.